You're listening to The Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to the Topcast. It's great to be spending some time with you again today. Being able to play lead sheets and to be able to sight read vocal guitar scores by reading mainly the chord charts has always been a skill of mine, and I know that many teachers are able to do the same thing, whether that's through years of playing music in their church or through accompanying singers or exam students, or just through their own exploration of playing pop songs. But when it comes to structuring a step-by-step process of actually teaching this skill to students, I wasn't sure where to start, and I know that many teachers have felt the same way. While we might be able to play the lead sheets confidently ourselves, we were never really taught this skill, were we, by our own teachers. And so we don't have a model in the same way as we have a model for teaching reading and interpretation and technique and things. Now, just before I go on, if you're not sure what I mean by a lead sheet, I'm talking about being able to read music that only has a treble clef notation showing the song melody and then chord symbols above that music like G7, E minor, B major 7, etc. Oftentimes with guitar chord symbols too. Sometimes it'll have left hand and right hand, so it'll be a piano vocal score, but a traditional lead sheet just has one line of music, a treble clef with the melody, and then the chord symbols above. And many teachers would be familiar with this notation from jazz books like the Real Book and the Fake Book series, but it's also used in classical music. I mean, any song or piece of music really can be written. I mean, even, a Mozart sonata famous melody or the Bach toccata could be written in a lead sheet format. Maybe the toccata wouldn't work so well. But I do have a great classical music book like the 101 Classical Hits for Buskers, which is just full of just lead sheets for classical music. It's fantastic. It's an incredibly versatile and fast way to notate and read music, but it does require a knowledge of style and groove, accompaniments and chords to make it sound musical. And that's the challenge for teachers and students. So a few years ago, I called on my great friend, the late Forrest Kinney, and asked him to come on a webinar to chat about this topic and to share his process with teachers. I knew Forrest had a process that would make approaching this really accessible both for students and teachers, and so I was really excited that he was happy to share it with us. And to date, it still remains one of the most popular webinars I've ever run, and I've now done over 80 or 90 of them over the last 10 years now. It's insane to think of. And today I thought I'd share that webinar with you for free on the podcast. It's around 45-50 minutes long and will be a great starting place for thinking about helping your students understand and play lead sheets. But why is learning to read lead sheets an important skill for pianists? In my opinion, it's a critical skill and part of being what I call a versatile, all-rounder musician. The kind of pianist who can play Happy Birthday, who can jump in and accompany a singer or play for the school musical, the kind of pianist who can start their own garage band or join in the jazz band at school and not feel out of their depth, pianists who can improvise and create and play all types of genres, understand groove and play in different styles. To me, these are the characteristics that we want to develop in our students, right? We don't want them to be constrained to only reading a score and feeling completely out of their depth if that's taken away, or if they're thrown into a different sort of situation. We want them to be flexible and to be able to enjoy their pianistic skill in many different ways. And so that's why I rate playing lead sheets as one of the most important skills for us to teach our piano students, because playing lead sheets unlocks a whole world of musical exploration. And it's not just in pop music either. So listening today as I chat with our great friend Forrest and find out how teaching lead sheets can form a part of your own teaching repertoire. And I want you to stick around until after the replay of this for a very special $100 discount on the course that Forrest has created for us. It's called Taking the Lead. It's available as a one-off purchase, and I'm going to be giving you a $100 discount off that course price. It's crazy. You're going to absolutely love it, and you'll hear a little bit about that in today's recording. Now, if you're not sure who Forrest was an educator who taught music for over 4 decades. He was a nationally certified teacher of music and recognised by the MTNA. His goal in life was to help others become creative, whole musicians, capable of enjoying the four arts of music, as he called it: improvising, arranging, composing, and interpreting. Forrest lived among mossy trees in the mountains east of Seattle, generally preferring what he called a 19th century lifestyle. He was immensely grateful to be able to make his living by creating music and books and by sharing his belief that creativity is a key to happiness.
For now, I'm going to formally welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's free online seminar for piano teachers, worship pianists, music leaders, and pianists from around the world interested in finding out about ways to be more creative with chord-based playing from lead sheets and learning how to pass these skills on to their students. One of my primary goals as a piano teacher is to create what I call all-rounder musicians. And just like cricket players, these are students who can do more than just read, interpret, and perform notated music. These are musicians who can play in a band, accompany a singer, transpose music, realize a lead sheet, compose a chord progression, muck around with a jazz standard, and perhaps improvise the blues. And a lot of pianists and teachers also hold roles playing music in worship situations. But few, in my experience, have ever been taught the skills really required for success in this field. Now, I've personally spent a lot of time playing for church services in my school and college and accompanying roles, and I know those skills required, they can be right outside the comfort zones of a lot of classically trained pianists. And in those worship situations, not only are you expected to read lead sheets and play in a band, but you also have to improvise during those quiet times and keep your playing sounding fresh, oftentimes on really scrappy keyboards and pretty crummy pianos and digital organs sometimes as well. And when we think about it, aren't these the kind of skills we want for our students as well as us? Don't we want to create musicians who are just as comfortable in front of a chord chart and a digital keyboard as they are in front of a Steinway on a stage? As comfortable creating a chord progression for a backing track as sight reading a minuet? What I want in my students, and I wonder if you're the same, are versatile musicians who have a deep understanding of music and a breadth of musical experience that allows them to perform in just about any circumstance with or without music. And when it comes to ensuring that our piano students are competent and versatile all-rounder musicians, nothing, in my opinion, beats chords and lead sheets, which is what today's all about. Pop songs, band music, jazz charts, modern praise and worship music, it's all written in lead sheet form. And so neglecting to teach this to our students, I really think is depriving them of an ability to engage in a large proportion of today's music. Indeed, students with an ability to play lead sheets have a much stronger ability to read and decode standard notation, to compose music and improvise as well. But it really does help with their reading of normal music. It also allows them to play in bands and sight read, accompany, and even to make a living from their playing in the future. But how do you do it? That's a big question, right? How do you teach students to be these all-rounder pianists? And what if you've never taught a lead sheet before, even if you can do it yourself? Even for teachers who might be competent lead sheet readers themselves, knowing where to start can be a real challenge. And so that's what today is all about. So it's great to see so many people who have already logged in. We've got well over 400 people with us now, and lovely to see so many of you saying hello from all different parts of the world. I would love to say a personal welcome to you all, but unfortunately there's just too many today. Now, if you haven't met me before, my name is Tim Topham, and I'm a music educator and a piano teaching specialist based here in Melbourne, Australia. And I've been teaching both privately and in primary and secondary school education for 20 years, and now focus more on supporting piano teachers to improve innovation, to teach more creatively, and grow really successful studios through things like this online seminar. And I've been reading personally and playing lead sheets ever since I was about 12, and have found this ability indispensable in my performing, accompanying, and teaching career, which has included everything from playing in restaurants. I've got a really bad story about playing in restaurants, to accompanying instrumentalists and singers, playing piano for musical theatre auditions, conducting musical theatre, and playing in lots of bands too. But it's not just me today. I'm very, very proud to welcome my co-host. He needs very little introduction. He's one of the most prominent writers, thinkers, clinicians, and teachers of creative pedagogy including improvising, composing, and arranging. His books include Pattern Play, Puzzle Play, Create First, Chord Play, and heaps more. And he's run workshops and live teaching demonstrations all around the world. He is a superstar of the creative piano teaching and playing world and very much a kindred spirit. Welcome to the webinar, Mr. Forrest Kinney.
Thank you very much. And just for the record, I did not write a book called Heaps More. I just want you to know.
It's just so great to have you here, Forrest. And, anytime we connect, and I know that everyone watching who has interacted with you, seen you on stage or heard you speak, has felt that same, just that love of music and playing and supporting people that comes through everything that you do. So thank you for all you've given to the world of piano.
And thank you, Tim, for having me here and providing so many resources for teachers. During your opening monologue, you couldn't hear me because my mic was off, but I kept doing little amen cadences.
I like it.
Scenario so well. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely welcome. It's my pleasure. So look, I'm actually going to pop a quick poll up on the screen, and I might just get you to pop your camera off again, Forrest, for just a moment. We'll get you back. Don't worry, everyone. We're going to be getting Forrest back very, very soon. I'm just going to pop up a quick poll because I'm really interested to find out what's brought people here. So if you have a look in your chat window there, I've got a poll, and I'd love for you to just click which statement suits you the most. So we've got things from I've never done this before and I need help, to I already play from lead sheets but I don't really know how to teach it, to I already teach lead sheets but want to get better, or I'm a worship band leader and I want to play for that area, or the last option there is I just want to hang out with Forrest and hopefully me as well. So pop in your reply to that. I'd love to see what's brought you here. Looks like I'm already teaching lead sheets and want to get better is our top one at the moment. So that's 42%. We've also got 20% who have never done it before and need help, and about 22% who already play, but again, don't know how to teach it so well. So looking perhaps for more of that structure. That's fantastic. Very helpful. We've got 7% Forrest who want to hang out with you. So that's a good sign. I'm sure there's really everyone, but
I've done better than percent before, but it's all right.
Fantastic. No, that's really, really helpful. Thank you, everyone, for just going through that. So let's go through what you're actually going to learn on today's webinar. And I'll just go through this really quickly because we're going to try and do a whole lot at once, but we'll keep it as clear as we can. So we're just going to go over the why or what and how of lead sheets, some ways to teach chords and when to use inversions, which is often a challenge. We're going to go through some of those left-hand styles for maximum impact. Forrest has got a superb trick for adding sevenths to any chord, and sevenths can be so confusing for students. Accompaniment and solo styles and how they differ, and also just some information about further resources for your playing and teaching. And our goal today is really to boost your confidence playing and teaching lead sheets by showing you a step-by-step approach that you can try today. Now, as always, I love giving away lots of bonuses. So here are your freebies for being live with us today. I've taken a section of some handouts that Forrest has created for us, all about using Pachelbel's canon. This is such a great chord progression to explore with students. So I thought I'm just going to give you these as about 6 pages about how Forrest uses and teaches the Pachelbel canon chords as part of his program. We're also going to give you the left-hand patterns and styles ultimate guide, which is one of my favorite downloads and one of the most popular from my website. And I've fully updated my easy chord progressions to inspire creativity. This is a handout that needs no music at all. It's literally just cool chord progressions using some sus chords and slash chords and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you'll get a certificate of professional development as part of being here. I think it's really important that we all keep track of our development. So that will be coming your way as well at the end. With that in mind, I think we're going to head back to our screen, our videos. So there we go. Right on about 500 people here. So let's get started, Forrest. I'm so excited. And I really just want to hear you play. But, we could almost all just sit here and have a 40-minute concert with Forrest, but we won't. So just so we're all on the same page to begin, Forrest, can you tell us what a lead sheet is, how it looks, and where they're most often used? Let's just start with the real basics quickly.
Okay, I will do it quickly because I know a lot of people have experience. basically, a lead sheet is 2 bits of information. It's a melody, and it's got these letters of the alphabet above it. And of course, those are chord names. In this case, we have the tune to Happy Birthday and a C major chord, G major chord. Basically, that is a lead sheet. Sometimes you will see it with lyrics. Sometimes you will see this, and that has no melody. And this is actually not called a lead sheet. It's called a lyric sheet. And Tim and I will be referring to that as well. I think the most important thing to know about chord symbols is simply capital letters represent major chords. And when you see a little m or a dash sign, that represents minor. And boy, if you know your major minor chords, you're well on the way to being able to play a great deal of music. Almost all chords, except diminished and augmented chords, can be thought of as evolving out of these simple major and minor triads. So in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, it's what I call the art of arranging. It's taking those letters and knowing what to do with them. Because, see, a beginner will look at a C and they'll say, in theory class, I learned that this is a C chord. So that's what I'll do. But now the art of arranging is realizing that that C can mean 10,000 things, a million things. So for me, you see, that C means I could do this. Because I've been playing a long time. Now, every note I just played except the melody was a part of the C chord and the G chord. So I feel like if you're going to lose your connection and you're going to disappear, the most important understanding I can convey is that a chord is not this. A chord is a family of notes that can be played in any possible way. So I might play it like this. I might play it like this. And it's fun with a student to play the same tune, same 2 chords in all sorts of different styles to help them realize that, you mean that's a C chord? You mean that's a C chord? You mean that's a C chord? Yes, they're all C chords because they have C and G. That's what a chord is.
Right.
So I think that's the most important understanding to attain.
That, of course, is one of the hardest things too, because we all want to do some of those flashy things that you've just said with our C chord, but it's a matter of just, there are steps to take, particularly with students. It's quite a slow process, and getting it right, getting the basics right can be really time consuming at the start, but with practice, you'll get there. Now, you've already heard some of my views about why lead sheets are important. What's your take on that? Why would you encourage teachers to make this a bit of a priority in their lessons?
I think you covered it very, very well. I mean, I think what I can do is just speak from my own personal experience. In terms of professional opportunities, I simply can't imagine my life without understanding chords and lead sheets. I mean, I played on cruise ships. I played at the home of the richest man in the world 27 times. I've played tons of weddings and with singers. I played in praise bands. I played in stage bands. All these professional and social opportunities are because I understand chords. I love it as a teacher. A student comes in and I can address this whole pantheon of needs that they have. Another reason is I love some of the old tunes. And for me, it's a delight to sit down and take an old tune. I mean, sometimes I would much rather play that tune than even Chopin, which is saying a lot. And so, I mean, that's just some of the reasons. But one more. If you understand harmony, to me, it takes so much anxiety out of music making, out of learning it, and out of memorizing it, and out of creating it. For example, this piece. All those notes, I think I just played a couple hundred notes. I don't know if you counted them, but chords, just 2 chords. So when I play that piece, I'm not anxious about remembering 296 notes. I'm thinking A flat major, E flat 7 with an A flat in the bass. So there's two of the reasons that I like it. I feel this is essential.
There's some people are trying to work out who the richest person in the world is. Are you able to give any and tell us who it was?
Second richest now.
Right.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yes. You've had a long relationship with him.
Yeah, well, I signed what's called an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. So technically, I'm not supposed to mention that I've been there. So now you see, I'm going to basically be taken away by agents in a moment. So, I mean, it could happen that I just suddenly, oh my gosh, here they are. They're at the door.
So you've given us a little bit of a demo already of playing a lead sheet, but perhaps can you give us, let's work on a really simple tune, a simple way to play it, and maybe a more complex way, and a couple of different styles perhaps.
Okay, let's take Happy Birthday, since it's a tune everybody has to know and everybody should know, or you might have to suffer from what I call HBPHD, which is Happy Birthday Public Humiliation Disorder. You're asked to play it and you don't know how. So the first question I think you always have to ask is, am I playing solo or am I accompanying? And to me, that's kind of the first real division. So let's start with playing solo, because there's no singer in the room. I mean, I won't admit to being a singer in a public place. So if I'm going to play Happy Birthday, what style, you see? And I'm going to look at that C chord. Am I going to play? Or maybe. And if I'm going to play an accompaniment, again, it's always the question of, well, what style? A basic rock style? Latin birthday. So, but you ask about simple to hard. Now, each one of these styles can be done at a very simple level, and each one can be built up in a progressive way. So I think I'm going to pick ragtime because it's a fun style. So if I'm playing Happy Birthday, I'm going to, first of all, change it to 4/4 to fit into ragtime. A beginner might do this. The next step would be to break it up in a simple way. The next step might be to change the bass so it moves down to the 5th. And that gives a traditional ragtime sound. The next step would be to encourage the student to do syncopated rhythms in the right hand to create what are called ragged melodies, which is actually where the term ragtime came from. The phrase ragged melody. So it might sound like this. I'm improvising a little bit, just because it's impossible for me not to. The next stage might be to add some broken chords, and again in a syncopated rhythm. And of course, the more advanced player could do that with octaves. And add a more complex bass. So there's simple to complex.
You just had a smile on my face as soon as you started that. It's just such a classic sound, isn't it?
It is. It is.
That job
was a genius, really.
Yeah, oh, totally. And if it wasn't for Scott Joplin, I probably would have quit piano around the age of 14, I think. As soon as my teacher started giving me his music, I was hooked, and I will forever love ragtime music.
Excellent.
So before we sort of go into more depth on different styles, I did promise everyone a bit of a step-by-step approach. So let's go right back to the beginning. And one person has already asked, I think it was Anne, for question one is, when is a student ready to start learning lead sheets? And what is step one of the process? Where do we actually begin, Forrest?
Yeah. Well, I began in the first lesson. Now, the first answer or question I always get is, well, how? I mean, the student can't read even a treble clef, so they're not ready to do lead sheets. But all lead sheets are melodies. And in the very beginning, students can learn to play melodies. And what I do is I will take a book and cover my hand, and we'll play a game. I'll say, I'm starting on G. Can you play the notes of Happy Birthday, the first phrase? Ah, good. And we'll play an ear game. If they get it wrong, if let's say they do this, we'll explore the difference between what I played and what they played and start developing their sense of tonal discernment. And so in that way, they learn to play a number of tunes by ear, not by rote, but by ear. And then we do some transposing. Then we start adding bass notes. Again, as a game, I'll say, well, what do you think? Is it C here? Is it F here? Well, take a guess. It's kind of like going to the optometrist, where, they'll say, well, is it the left lens that's more in focus or the right lens? And, it's a game with the kids. And then we'll turn the bass notes into fifths to start preparing the hand to play chords, because as you know, it's difficult to play a chord for a lot of beginners. Then we'll build up to, and then they're ready to start styling chords. So I do that for a number of months before they learn to read. I'll have them learn, a half dozen tunes, learn to transpose them, learn to improvise a little bit with them. Then we start studying the treble clef. And incidentally, this is exactly how Clara Schumann was taught by her father at the age of 5. She learned tunes, she learned transposing, she learned improvising for 10 months. Then her father started to teach her treble clef, and then 2 months later started teaching her bass clef. And Clara Schumann turned out okay.
Absolutely. So just to recap that, you actually start with an oral activity where it's a copy and repeat kind of by ear playing for a number of simple tunes. Yeah. Then you'll help them add a bass note. And I assume at that point you're starting to talk to them about keys, or at least chord areas, so they know C's and G's if you're working in C. Would that be right?
Yeah, exactly. I as soon as they're ready, I start trying to get them thinking the key of G as well, just so they start to see the whole pattern of the keyboard and start to hear 1, 4, 5 root movement. That's my real focus for a while.
Right. Yes, and being able to hear that and even hum it, and then being able to play C and G or whatever it is. Yeah, nice.
I wasn't trained this way. I was trained classically. I started at the age of 15 and, did study with a Juilliard teacher for many years. But I was humiliated when I started jazz lessons at 28 because I couldn't play Happy Birthday by ear in the key of A, which is where I coined, HBPHD, because boy, was I humiliated. So I vowed then that my students wouldn't suffer a similar fate. So I began to teach this way back then. I'm happy to say that my students have generally had a lot better ears than I have.
Mm. Well, I mentioned at the beginning that we are very much kindred spirits, and my approach I've actually formalized into a framework I call No Book Beginners, which is right. Very similar, that approach of just leave the method book aside. Reading can come later. It's so much more important to build students' rhythm, melody, oral discrimination, singing, all of that stuff first.
Listening, confidence, flow, relaxation, posture, all these pre-literate elements. It's very interesting to note that Waldorf education, which is a system of education that many of you might know about, they actually don't encourage children to read till the age of 6 or 7. They feel like there's so many activities that are necessary to actually prepare a student to be able to read. And if they're not done, some people won't ever attain the highest levels of literacy.
Right. Quite a few people are surprised by the fact that you didn't start until 15.
15 and a half, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Wow.
My older siblings had disasters at the piano, and so I studied saxophone, but I kept coming back to the family piano and would, improvise. And finally, I started classical lessons with a very good teacher who's, by the way, a dear friend, and he's going to be 93 in October.
Wow, there you go. I actually just caught up with my childhood piano teacher last week, who's in a home and unfortunately not very well, but she's always so excited to see and hear what I've been up to and things. It's so lovely having those connections. Now, a couple of people have asked some good beginner songs to teach orally. What are some of your other go-to songs or tunes that you use?
You know, it always depends on the age. I always like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It's perfectly diatonic. You've got the opening lead, but it's an easy ear tune because two reasons. It's step by step and it's right on the beat. The drawback, of course, with Happy Birthday is you've got that upbeat. And boy, that causes some problems for people to have that feeling of coming in on the third beat. You know, with kids, I'm comfortable with nursery tunes, but about the age of 7 or 8, I start steering away from them. I teach mostly teenagers and adults, so I'm doing tunes like Green Sleeves, which I find to be a super rich, deep piece, and I always share the lyrics, you know, alas, my love, you've done me wrong to cast me off discourteously. And I like a lot of pop tunes, particularly the classic ones from my era, the Beatles tunes, Let It Be is satisfying, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. The other great thing about using these folk tunes and nursery rhymes is that they're all copyright free and you can use them as you wish, which is always a delight. We're going to give you lots more ideas in some of the handouts and resources we're going to share with you later about the music that Forrest uses as well. So we've talked about some of those introductory steps, playing by ear firstly, adding some left-hand notes, and then starting to introduce chords. And for teachers that are still very much focused on the reading method first, which is fine because that's how most of us were taught. What I say is that one thing I love doing when students are ready is if your student is learning a right-hand melody in a method book and they're reading it, quite often one of the things that we enjoy doing is playing along with them. There'll be a nice, rich accompaniment part that we can play. And I always feel that the students are missing out because they're not using their other hand. So one simple thing you can do, if that's your approach, is just get students to add some bass notes, like Forrest does, to the melody that they're reading, or even a chord if you want to in their left hand, if they're able to do that, or fifths are great too. Just something to help them start to appreciate that idea of harmony, and then you can go into more detail later. So let's explore your top 3 styles. And I think we're talking here about left hand because it really all comes down to the left hand, doesn't it? And rhythm.
You know, it does, except for when you're accompanying, right? When you're accompanying a soloist, they've got the melody. That frees up your right hand to be, playing the chords. So why don't we start with that one, and then I'll talk about my favorite 2 solo styles that use the left hand.
That sounds great.
In my approach, I call it BAP, B-A-P, and I call it basic accompaniment position. And this is where you play your chord right around the middle of the piano, and you play a note in the bass, single note, or octave. A rich, full sound, actually quite simple to play, but tremendously rich. And of course, there's so many ways that can start simple, like I just did. A beginner can do this. And of course, you can leave the root off with the right hand. You've got the root and the bass. So now they're just playing a root and a third and a fifth. You can sing along with this, by the way, because I'm playing Let It Be by the Beatles.
Times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
That's a beginner level. A more advanced student would start playing the block chord in different rhythms. A little more advanced would play some broken chords and syncopated patterns. A little more advanced would start doing some different inversions of the right hand. A little more advanced would start maybe adding an octave in the right hand. So they're doing 4-note chords. So there we go from simple to complex. Okay, now to answer your real question, which is more about the solo style, I would say for ballads, my favorite style is what I call the Chopin sound. And this is where you take a chord and you take the third, that is the middle note of the chord, and you play it up an octave. So. And that sounds very rich, but it's really quite easy. Now, of course, everybody's objection is, Forrest, you have a big hand. It's not fair. There's no way that I can play a tenth. And I always say to students, and this is a very effective way, I always say, I understand, because last night I had a terrible bandsaw accident while I was making a stand for the laptop for this presentation. And, there's no way I can play a Chopin left hand with one finger. But, I love it, so I'm going to try anyway. Gosh, I can do it because I have an arm that can flow and I have a pedal that can connect the notes. So a beginning student probably isn't ready for this, but you'd be surprised. I've taught a lot of adult beginners within the first 6 months how to do this, particularly a song like that in the key of C, which has the same movement. A more advanced student might learn to start to play those in inversions. So, for example, let's take Happy Birthday again. Actually, that's another step. That's where I substituted some of the abnormal chords for the usual chords. So that would be another step. I suppose a more advanced step would be adding some chord tones in the right hand. So adding chord tones to this hand. Now, a third style would be, I would say, when you've got a strong beat, you need a left hand that's got a strong beat. And it just sounds wimpy to do that. The very first style my jazz teacher taught me was derived from the boogie woogie piano style. I mean, that's like hitting a log with a stick. I mean, that's
so groovy.
Yeah, it's right. It is.
I call it, with kids, I call it the outlaw motorcycle gang kind of sound. It's like really rough and
Right, it is. It's got no subtlety at all. I mean, it's like American politicians. Whoops! I was going to keep calling.
Don't worry, we're having our own politician hassles over here too.
Oh, okay. All right. So now the thing about this sound is it is great for teaching rhythm. In fact, my jazz teacher admitted to me a few weeks later, he said, I showed you that, and I hated it, by the way, when he first taught me. But he showed it to me, he said, to improve my rhythm. Because even though I'd been classically trained and was playing Chopin etudes, I did not have a strong feeling for the beat. And he wanted me to develop that. So I like to teach that particular bass right there. Now, what I've done is I'm playing a C chord, but I'm omitting the middle note of the chord. So I'm just playing a fifth. Well, that sounds like a tom-tom. So now I'm going to alternate between the fifth and the note above it to create a little melodic interest. So that's an A. You'll notice how I'm giving a slight stress to that A. That's called.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, that's called playing the backbeat, or and that's kind of the big innovation in early rock and roll. I mean, the boogie woogie players didn't do that, but people like Jerry Lee Lewis came along and they started hitting that back. So I love that sound for playing anything like Don't be cruel to a heart that's true. I love that lyric.
So no, that's great. So that's your main style, Chopin, that Chopin-esque style, root, fifth, third above, which I think is just a wonderful go-to, used so much in ballad and pop music writing today. Then we've got the boogie style, which is just so different, but again, really easy to attain. And you've also talked about that basic accompaniment style. And students should know the difference between whether they're playing an accompaniment and there's another singer, or they're playing along to an app or another instrument, versus that solo style. And I think that's important for them to know.
I often encourage students to sing with the piano. And it's difficult, as you know, to get people to do it, but it's really surprising how many teenagers can be lured out of their self-conscious den, and then suddenly they start just doing it. They
100%. Yeah. I recommend that all teachers encourage kids to sing, even boys whose voices are changing. It's amazing what can come out of it. Now, I noticed you've been playing mostly in the key of C. So a quick couple of tips about finding the rest of the chord sets that students are going to need to know.
Yeah, I would say two things come to mind. Number one, transposing, and which I mentioned earlier with Clara Schumann. So just to get a student to know other keys, say, okay, let's try it this week in the key of G. How do you do that? Well, let's explore. So that's technique number one. Technique number two is you can often show a student all 24 major and minor triads if they're interested in a single lesson. I have kind of a sneaky way of doing it. I call it the 3-2-1 technique. And here it is. 3 shapes, 2 bees, and 1 black sheep. Now, I know it's a weird expression, but it works. 3 shapes, 2 bees, and 1 black sheep. So the 3 shapes are white, white, white. So the 1, 4, 5 in C, they're white, white, white chords. The 1, 4, 5 in A major are the shape of white, black, white. And the 1, 4, 5 in A flat major is the black, white, black shape, the Oreo cookie shape. So already I've learned 3/4 of the chords. Now, the 2 Bs, they're always like refuse to be like anybody else. They're a unique shape.
Refuse to be. I see what you did there.
What's that?
Refuse to be. I see what you did there. Yeah, very clever.
Good ear. B would be white, black, black, and then black, white, white. B major, B flat. And one black sheep. There's always one chord that's all black keys. And in this case, it's G flat major. Now, the same technique works for the minor keys. The 3 shapes, you've got white, 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 A minor, D minor, E minor in the key of A minor. You've got C minor, F minor, G minor, the white, black, white shape, 1, 4, 5 in C minor, and C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp, the black, white, black shape in C sharp minor. There you got it. The 2 Bs, B minor and B flat minor, totally unique shapes, white, white, black, and black, black, white. And then, of course, there's one
black sheep.
One black sheep, and that's E flat minor. I've had students learn all 24 chords in one lesson if they want to. And that gives them a lot of confidence. I call that the alphabet of harmony, those 24 chords.
Yeah, I like how you're using the visual, the kinesthetic feeling and the visual side of things. Someone else, Faye, said she uses cookies for chord, vanilla for CFG, vanilla sandwich with fudge in the middle, Oreo.
The problem is I'm a health food guy. So, even saying Oreo cookies, I kind of feel a bit guilty about it. So,
yeah, the vegan analogies might not work so well. So let's move to, and I know we're moving really quickly, but I just want to get as much value as we can. Quick thoughts on inversions, because I tend to start very much in root position with students. It just gives them that foundation, the roots on the bottom. It's a great way to visualize things. When do you start with inversion?
I agree with you. I like staying with root positions for a while so they start really hearing that 1, 4, 5 movement. If I introduce inversions too soon, the ear doesn't have quite that clarity. But I do introduce inversions in the right hand soon after teaching them basic accompaniment position. So, instead of leaping around like that, let's, learn inversion. So in terms of solo style, I often will make the case that inversions are really excellent for creating bass lines. So for example, canon in D, that sounds kind of lumpy to jump around like that. But if I simply invert some of the chords, we have that nice descending bass line. I'm going quickly, but I know we have some other things we wanted to cover. So there you go.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just a great little overview of it. I've just been corrected that Oreos are apparently vegan, by the way. So there we go. I should have said healthy, not healthy. Anna says, she says, beware of B to remind them of that. And there are some questions here about your puzzle play books. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. I want to keep the flow going for now, everyone. And I want to move on to seventh chords, because these can be an absolute nightmare. Dominant seventh, major seventh. I know you've got a trick that can help. Please, please, please show us all.
Great. Yeah, I mean, so far we've just played with triads, but the real art of arranging, I think, comes with knowing the styles, but then knowing what colors to add to tones. I'm going to take just a second to talk about adding a second, because the same way of thinking applies to sevenths. If I'm playing an A minor, it's a gray day in Seattle and autumn's coming, I'm not ready for it. How do I make that A minor more minor? Well, instead of playing A, C, E, I'm going to just move that up to play a second. I'm going to move it up a whole step. See, so by instead of playing the root, playing the note a whole step above, I intensify that minor chord. Now, in the same way, to play a seventh, if I want to sweeten that A minor chord, if that's just too stark and I want it to be sweeter, I can move my thumb down to play a G. It's kind of a sweet day after all. And that movement down a whole step creates the A minor seventh chord. So if you teach add two chords and seventh chords in that basic accompaniment position, the student can see, oh my gosh, yeah, I've got roots in the left hand. There's really no need for me to play one more root in this hand. I'm going to add a color. I'm going to move up to play a second, or I'm going to move down to play a seventh. And you can do the same with a major chord. You've got a C chord. You want to make it sweeter, move it up. That's called an add two chord. Used a lot in countries. I'm starting to shift.
Stop showing off. Yeah.
If you want to play a seventh, then you simply take that root and move down the whole step. So here's the C chord. It's a C7. So it's a different way of teaching it than I was taught.
Yeah, I totally love this approach. So let's just go over it one more time just quickly, because it's so different to how I used to teach and how I was taught. So I used to think, okay, when you're teaching a seventh chord, you do the C chord and then you add a B flat or a B to the top. So suddenly you've got a 4-note chord. So that's much harder for students. And then you've got the question of, is it a flat or not? How far down from the root have you moved? So I love this. So just to clarify, Forrest is taking a C chord. Instead of adding the D, which is an add two, he's just moving his thumb up one note. So he's playing D, E, G, and that's an add two sound. And he's done that by just moving up a tone.
Right.
And by the same token, if you move your thumb down a tone to the B flat in this case, you'll get the seventh, and it's exactly the same for the minor. This is just a winning formula. Did I get that right?
You got it absolutely right. Now, this helps solve that one real difficult issue you referred to a minute ago, which is the so-called major seventh chord. And that's the only time you move your thumb a half step. If it says C major 7, that's when you move your thumb down a half step to play the B. But everywhere else, it's always a whole step. So students grasp it pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. If that's the one thing that everyone takes away from this, I think that's going to be an absolutely winning trick to learn. And so explore that with yourself first. Try it out before you try it with your students, but so much easier to understand. So thank you very much for sharing that, Forrest. And I would love to start just exploring the ultimate, what I call the ultimate way of playing a lead sheet, in my opinion, as a soloist, which is getting the chord in the right hand and the melody, and the left hand's playing the bass. Now, this, for me, is a longer process. You can't jump straight to this for students. It takes some time. Any kind of suggestions on this?
Oh, man, I agree with everything you just said. Yeah, my suggestion is have them play that basic accompaniment position for a while. Sing with them. Have them sing. So their right hand gets used to playing different inversions. So let's go back to Let It Be. It could be any tune, but you see how my right hand is getting comfortable moving between the different inversions. And then I would say, let's go ahead and add the melody to that bass line, just the melody. Now, can you combine accompaniment style and that melody? And it's interesting because since they know the different inversions in their right hand, I guess I'd use this inversion for this chord. And I'd use this inversion for that chord. And I'd use this inversion. They immediately see the topography and they go, that position would work best. So for me, the secret has been really incubating them in that basic accompaniment position style for a while.
Yeah, and just going slowly, working through it. I think one of the other tricks that I've learned from you too is that when a student's trying to add a chord beneath the melody note, don't think of it so much as a triad, but just take the melody note, add 2 chord notes below, or even just one, because sometimes it can be a bit of a stretch.
Yep, exactly.
So look, there are some amazing questions coming through, and I'm really conscious that I'd love to get to them. So if you've got some questions more generally for Forrest, I've been trying to not interrupt him too much. We're going to do a full Q&A in a few minutes' time, so hang on to your questions for them. But I've got one other question for you right now, Forrest, and that's any suggestions on where to find some lead sheets or lyric sheets? What's your resource?
I'm a little bit older than you. I won't say how much, but it's funny because when I was doing this, I used to go to my gigs and I had, this is called paper. Some of you might remember this. And I have a ton of these. It's my favorite. It's got every song the Beatles ever recorded. So you see, Tim could say, Forrest, do you know how to play I'm Looking Through You? And I'd say, of course. Now, I may have never played this before, but there it is, the melody, the chords, so I could do it. So I always say, go out and buy a fake book of your favorite music. My students really like this fake book, the Disney fake book. This is one that has a lot of, good movie themes. I even have this, the classical fake book, which
that is really good.
It's a cool book to have, believe me. So, I'm always one that I like a physical book. Of course, now you can get on Sheet Music Plus and buy digital versions of it. We talked about lyric sheets earlier, which are just, chord symbols and lyrics. I'm often sending my students to Ultimate Guitar and just having them download the lyric sheets, and we work with that. And boy, you can find almost everything there.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone else has mentioned 101 Hits for Buskers. They've got a classical version, which I love as well because it's that really small size. Great resource, very similar to the classical one that you've got there. And I did want to share with everyone some other places to get more resources because Forrest has done an incredible job. He's actually created and put all of what we've been exploring today down into a course. And someone mentioned in the chat before a 94-page download. Well, I'm not giving you that away on the webinar. You get a few pages from it as one of the bonuses. But Forrest has actually created a full course. It's an 8-part online video course with Forrest at the piano, the 96-page handout with full notation, questions and challenges to complete. You can obviously set your own pace, follow along with Forrest. You can try something out and then test it out with your students, come back to it a little bit later on. You can watch it as many times as you want, and you've got the full support of a community behind you.
Well, how good is that? It's obviously a heartfelt moment listening to Forrest again. We all miss him greatly, and he was just such an icon in the creative piano teaching area. But he's left us with so much that we can learn from, and one of those things is this incredible course that I mentioned right at the start, which is called Taking the Lead. And he recorded this for us in one of his mountain hideouts at the piano, and over 9 comprehensive video modules. Forrest teaches us what lead sheets are, how they look, what they mean, and how they work. His foolproof way of getting students to learn chords quickly based on visual and kinesthetic cues, and something he calls a black sheep. Chord styling and left-hand ideas to suit a variety of genres. How to make rich sounding accompaniments using what he calls BAP. The one-step trick to adding sevenths to any chord, jazz voicings that you can actually understand and use in your own teaching, and how to make your playing go BAM, BAM, and what this means for your students. You get to watch Forrest as he demonstrates at the piano and download the 100-page companion workbook, which will help streamline your learning and track things as you go through the course. And once you understand this information on chords, you'll be able to play from lead sheets, make arrangements of your favorite songs, and help students do the same thing. So, in order to grab the course, go to topmusic.co/lead, LEAD, and get your full course for $100 off the regular price. So the regular price is $149 US, so you're just going to pay $49 for 1 year's access. There's no ongoing subscription, and this is an epic course. Any questions, just shoot us an email, support@topmusic.co. And if you want to learn more about lead sheets and why you should 100% make them part of your regular teaching, then I've also got a couple of blog articles to share completely for free. One of them explains the difference between chord charts and lead sheets, and we'll put a link to that in our show notes. And we'll also link to another blog which outlines 9 reasons why playing lead sheets is essential for piano students. We'll put the 2 links for that in our show notes for today's episode at topmusic.co/episode 411. Now, I'm going to leave you today with another little bonus. I'm going to play the Q&A from the original webinar so that you can hear the questions the teachers were asking Forrest and I, and the responses that he was giving. It's really, really interesting. It's about another 20 minutes or so, so feel free to tune in and enjoy the Q&A from our webinar.
Forrest, if you turn your camera back on, we might go into some question and answers. This is your chance. Guys, if you've got any questions for Forrest, pop them in the comments box now and we'll get to them as we can. Forrest, you might have had a chance to have a look through some of them as well. But I did have one comment from someone who couldn't be live with us today that I wanted to ask you. And he says, when students are playing from a lead sheet, do you expect them to have an awareness of what key they're playing in, how the chords relate to each other, and how they behave together? Or do they just need to know how to form each individual chord? And if the latter is the case, how do they go about transposing a song into a different key?
You know, in general, I always begin with simpler tunes, 3-chord tunes, so they really hear the relationship between the chords, the movement of 1 to 4, the movement of 4 to 5. And so my students are always aware of the key, because the key is basically the reference point, the tonal center of gravity. So I would say I would answer by just saying, yes, a lot of transposing, a lot of awareness of what key they're in.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree as well. And it kind of comes, as you say, it comes with the territory. If you're starting to explore chords and they're playing in the key of G, they're going to need to know that G and D are important chords in that key, and so would be E minor. And so that's why I also love using the circle of fifth, for example, too. Elaine asked earlier, what is basic accompaniment position? Can you just give us a really quick reminder of those 2 positions that you tend to teach people?
I use this really anytime I'm working with somebody who's covering the melody. So that usually is a singer. Some of my best friends are singers, but it might be a flute player or a trumpet player or a string player. And so you don't have to cover the melody. So your right hand's going to be playing a chord right around the middle of the piano. And that's a key point maybe I didn't emphasize earlier. You don't want to be playing up there because it's too tinny. And you don't want to be playing down there because it gets pretty muddy. So the sweet spot on the piano is right around middle C. So you're going to be playing a chord with your right hand right around middle C. And then with your left hand, you're going to be adding the root and the bass. And if you can reach it, an octave. Amazing how rich that can sound, and yet how simple in concept it is.
Absolutely, yeah. And one little trick I love is for students who don't really want to sing, but need the melody and they just want to play the accompaniment chords. Celius asks, what's Forrest's approach to teaching scales and knowledge of the keys? How do scales come into your teaching?
What I've been talking about now is the art of arranging, which is very chord-based. I mean, it's all based around chords, so I really appreciate the question. I've written books about the art of arranging, puzzle play, chord play, but my other approaches, pattern play and create first, are all about scales. And I teach them by having people explore the relationships between the tones first in a very creative way. So, for example, I'll play an accompaniment, and I'll ask a student to just play, say, A, B, C, D, E, and just explore the relationship between those tones. So they're listening first. And then I'll introduce them to the whole scale, and I'll say, okay, that collection of notes is called A minor. And so we're going to learn by improvising first. And once they get a sense of the melodic nature, the melodic potentials of that scale, then later on, we may do much more use of that as a technical exercise. But I don't run scales first anymore. I used to, but I found that it tended to desensitize people to the melodic possibilities. So now we create first. Oh, that's the good name of a book. Oh, that's why I named it that. So we create first, and then the technique comes later.
Forrest, quickly, tell us about your books, because lots of people have been asking, and quite a few people have shared your fantastic website as to where they can get their books.
Well, great. Yeah, my website, if you can spell my name, which can be a challenge because Forrest is with 2 R's and Kinney is Kinney. If you go to www.forrestkinney.com, you can read about my books. And actually on my site, you can download a free 208-page sampler of all 37 of my books. And it's free. I'd say the main series to know about are the Puzzle Play series, which is what we've been talking about today. It's this ability to take a chord and keep expanding the possibilities. And that's what the course is based off of, is that series of books. And my other, I think, most important series is the one I just mentioned called Create First. And that's all about freely improvising using all kinds of different scales and modes, introducing all the intervals, and then even introducing chords in that way as well. So I could talk at length about my other books, but I know time's a factor here, so I'll just emphasize those 2 as probably the most popular and useful series, and there's lots of other treasures to be found there.
Absolutely. Yeah, your resources are just outstanding, so I can't recommend highly enough that you go and check out Forrest's website, and someone's put a link there for everyone to see. Paddy says, please tell everyone about your happy birthday arrangements, Forrest.
About 4 years ago, my high school piano teacher turned 88. And I thought, what can I do for the man who shaped my career and is such a dear friend? So I spent the summer and beyond writing 88 different variations on Happy Birthday in all sorts of different musical styles. Like, for example, Gershwin, I did blues. 86 other styles. And people enjoyed them so much because I play them at parties. They said, you should publish those. So I ended up putting them on my website. And they're actually one of the best-selling things on my website because it's fun to have all these different ways of playing. I have one teacher who plays Happy Birthday for their students in the style they think would best fit their student. And so they personalize Happy Birthday. So it's a fun project.
It's great. And it's available on Forrest's website if you want to check it out. Funny questions. I don't think this is a question you can answer in a couple of minutes. What is the best approach to learning to improv as if you were playing in a piano bar?
I think the best way is to start at the beginning, by closing your eyes, putting the pedal down and playing freely on black keys. And then getting my Create First and start creating with those patterns and start getting an ear for those rich chords. Like there's a pattern in the first book called Music of the Moment. And to start understanding how to create with those simple patterns will naturally evolve into an understanding of how to create with very complex patterns. But you can't really avoid those beginning steps. So I'd say start at the beginning, and it will evolve into the kinds of sounds that you want, which are the 9th and 13th chords.
Now, Jessica's got a great question, and I think I know what your answer is going to be. She says, what do you do if a student only wants to practice lead sheets and not classical repertoire? Just abandon the classical stuff and roll with it?
Boy, you want to end on a controversy, huh? I mean, everybody's saying thank you so much. And I really don't, I hate to end on a controversial note, but
I'll find one more for you after this and we'll finish with that question.
Great. Here's my orientation. I used to believe in a balanced lesson where I would try to do everything in every week, but I work with people now who are interested in creativity. I select those students. And there's one thing about creative people above all, which is they are driven by an internal desire to do something. And I've learned to go with that because when I go with it, they do amazing things. For example, I had a student just like that named Noah, and all he wanted to do was work on that Beatles fake book. And for a year and a half, all we did was Beatle arrangements. And the guy developed an amazing sense of rhythm, a quite good understanding of harmony and arranging. And then all of a sudden one day he said, I have got to learn Moonlight Sonata. He learned, I mean, we're talking not the full thing, but the middle movement. He played it beautifully at a level which astonished me. But it's because I went with his passion and he cultivated the desire. So over time, things balanced out. But at any particular moment, it looked like the lessons were imbalanced. So I have a different perspective now. I go with the passion.
And I do the same thing as well, particularly if you're teaching teenagers and definitely if you're teaching adults. And I think they're the age groups that this will most often happen with. I think often 7 or 8, 9-year-olds, they're happy to go with the flow and you can direct things. But those teenagers go with their passion. We'll finish with one question from Kelly. And apologies that I haven't been able to get to all your questions. So here's Kelly's question. We'll finish with this one. Embarrassing question. I'm one of those who would suffer from embarrassment if asked to play Happy Birthday to accompany a singer. Can you share a quick, easy way to do this on the spot? How should she get started?
Again, I would say think of it as just 3 chords, C, F, and G, and then you're going to learn them in a basic accompaniment position. So we're really just talking about 12 notes here. We're talking about learning C chord, and G chord, and F chord. And then just playing those in the right sequence. Happy C chord to G. Happy G chord to C, happy C chord to F, happy C chord G, C. And then play that, 20, 30 times, start singing, have a glass of wine, and you'll find that it starts to embellish and sound fun and interesting. You can just start at the basics and let it grow.
Let it grow. There's a song in that too. That's great. I thought you were actually going to break into song there, Forrest, for a moment, but not quite. Maybe another time.
Not yet. You haven't earned my trust yet. No. It's always in proportion to the amount of alcohol I've had, and I've had none today. So,
Right. Well, I think that's your next job because I think it's evening over there. So you go and have a glass of wine. On behalf of everyone, we've still got over 300 people in the room. Thank you so very, very much for sharing all your wisdom with us and for creating this incredible course for us in the Inner Circle.
Thank you, Tim, very much. And thank you for everything you do. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining me.
I hope you've enjoyed today's show and I look forward to seeing you inside our Top Music course library. Make sure you grab that discount. All the details are over at topmusic.co/lead. Until next week, I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Topcast. Speak to you again really soon. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.